Ready. Lloyd Meinen's the name. Ask me again, tell you the same. 75 years old. I went in the military on the 5th of June. I graduated from high school on the 3rd of June of the same year. And I just wanted to get out and see the world. I was 18 years old, and so I left for the military on the 5th of June. Took a train from St. Paul, Minnesota to Kansas City, Missouri. Got off in Kansas City, Missouri, hopped on a Greyhound bus and went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Did my 8 weeks of basic combat training. And then I came home for a leave, took the Greyhound bus all the way to Minneapolis to Eau Claire, Chippewa Falls. On the way back, 2 weeks later, I took a plane from Minneapolis to Detroit, to Cleveland, and to Philadelphia to go to Fort Dix as a wheeled vehicle mechanic. I was there in the fall of 1966 and got trained as a wheeled vehicle mechanic, and I was one of the top ones in my class. So Uncle Sam decided to send me to Fort Benning, Georgia. So we took the train at Fort Benning, Georgia. It was in September something, and took the train from Philadelphia down to Fort Benning and took tank training down there until about the 20th of December. Got the training done. Fort Benning was a real nice duty station. I could have stayed there my entire tour. Everything was nice. Played some football there besides, and a lot of physical activity. And anyway, then after that, I got orders to leave for Kaiserslautern, Germany. And I left on Christmas Eve, December 24th. Most of the guys got to go home for Christmas leave, but unfortunately I didn't. So I took the train from Atlanta, Georgia, back up to Trenton, New Jersey, and went over and got processed and hopped on the plane. Landed in London on morning of the 24th, but stayed on the plane to refuel. I remember being real foggy, like 6 o'clock in the morning. And after we refueled, we loaded up again and went to Frankfurt, Germany. Went through a half a day of processing there, and there I received my orders to go to the 3rd Armored Cavalry in Kaiserslautern. So I took a German train by myself, because the other guys got split off in different directions than I did, and got down to Mannheim, and there switched trains, not knowing much German, but I made it to Kaiserslautern about 8:30 at night on Christmas Eve. And the colonel's Jeep driver come to pick me up, took me to the barracks at Kaiserslautern, Kleber Kaserne it was called. And then this guy that was in charge of quarters says, you can't leave the barracks, but you can go to the mess hall for something to eat. Well, everyone else was through eating, but he said, they'll whip something for you to eat, and you can't leave the area because the old man, which is the company commander, he's gone over the holidays, so you can't leave post until he comes back and gives you indoctrination. So I went and got something to eat with the charge of quarters. He brought me back, put me up in my room, and sat there for a while. Here's a fellow by the name of Billy Cooper. He's from Ohio. He just got busted for fighting downtown. And he says, you want to go have a beer? And I said, I can't have a beer. I can't leave the barracks. And he said, well, come on with me. I said, well, the charge of quarters is right down the hall. He's going to hang us if he catches me leaving. No, we'll be all right. So we went out and went down the fire escape ladder. Went down and walked down through the motor pool, and there was a hole in the fence, and we went to Grapevine Cafe. And they got these big liter bottles of German beer. And I'm used to drinking American beer, so I'm figuring, well, had a couple of bottles. I was full. Came back, and we got back in. Of course, we didn't tell the world, but that was the end of that. I never pulled that stunt again. And we never got into trouble over it. So anyway, so I stayed there, and I did a lot of work, come up through the ranks. I was a Private E2 when I got to Germany. And in February, I made Private E3 of 1967. August of 1967, I made Corporal E4, and in February of 68, I made Spec 5, which is an E5 equivalent to a buck sergeant. So I went through the rank pretty fast. But what helped a lot is that the guys that I was replacing, there was a lot of people being rotated back to the States or being shipped to Vietnam. So as in the military, you need a chain of command. So everybody can't be followers, so they got to pick out a leader until someone shows up to take their place. So anyway, that's how I got up that high. And I got to go to Grafenwehr, Germany. We did border patrol over there on the Czechoslovakian border and along the Iron Curtain. And at that time, the Russians occupied Czechoslovakia. So we took the place, the 3rd Armored Cavalry took the place of the 9th Armored Cavalry, which was in Augsburg, Germany, for 2 months. So we hauled all our tanks over from Kaiserslautern, which was across the whole country, through Heidelberg and everything by rail. And we got there, it was in the morning, but it took a couple days because we had to hurry up and load the tanks all up from midnight to 2 in the morning on the flat cars on the railroad. And we ended up 2 miles out of town when daylight broke, and we just slept for 4 hours, and we could have slept in our barracks. But anyway, I got to see the Heidelberg Castle when we went through by rail, which is all lit by candle. And when we got over there, we unloaded our tanks. We loaded them all up with our 50 caliber machine guns and all the armament that we needed to replace these people from the 9th Armored. Well, they backed their tanks out of the position, and we drove ours into position. And then they left, and they did come back to take our place when we left. It was, after the 1st of December, but it was before Christmas. And one of the things that'll always stick in my mind, there was this crazy bastard. His name was Sam Schafer. He was from Dayton, Ohio. And excuse me. Anyway, when they backed their tanks out and we drove ours in, and the Russians are over there 3/4 of a mile away doing their goose step, and they're up in the towers over here watching, and Sam had been there before. He liked getting scrapped downtown. He was your good old American boy. He hopped up on the tank, and he took an orange and he started peeling it. And I often wondered, what the hell did those Russians think? They're not afraid of us at all. They're sitting there with their machine guns and all that shit. Here's Sam eating an orange with his legs crossed, you want a piece of me, A lot of brave men. So, anyway, when that all got done with, we had tank gunnery, and then we went back to Frankfurt, Germany by convoy. The tanks all went back on the train, but I didn't have to go back with the tanks that time. I went with the convoy, and I rode shotgun for a guy that was driving a fuel truck. And we went from the Czechoslovakian border to Frankfurt and then back south to Mannheim. And then we were back for Christmas anyway. So, but that's one thing I'll always remember, that East German border patrol. The guys that been there just weren't afraid. They'd been there. They'd been down that trail, and it really made an impression on me. As goofy as this Sam was, I'm glad he's on our side. And so anyway, I stayed there another year. Then in March of '68, February, end of January, first the Tet Offensive was going on in Vietnam. And it was in March or so, we got called out in ranks after chows. We always had rank every day at 12:30 or so. and they'd make a head count and everything, tell us what our duties were for the afternoon. Most of the time we knew anyway, but it was just a ritual, so everybody is work on time and nobody's missing or whatever. And anyway, they had everybody there, and our first sergeant's name was Peter Deitch, and he started calling out names. And there was a guy by the name of Sergeant Swofford from Chicago. He's a buck sergeant, standing next to me, and he was same rank as I was, but he had been in Vietnam before, and I hadn't. And he poked me with his elbow. He said, the last time, he whispered to me, the last time I seen something like this, a whole bunch of guys went to Vietnam. And so we're standing there calling off names. They're calling up name, call your name, following ranks behind me. He kept on saying, follow behind me. Everybody stand in ranks. So all of a sudden my name was called. So I went back there and I stood in line and don't know what in the hell is going on, but it's got to be something big. And anyway, so when we were all done, they marched the people that they called out. And the other people were to go back to their duties. There was I think like 244 guys in our outfit, and 181 guys got called for Vietnam. So you know it was going to be a big shipment. And there's no way in hell that the 3rd Armored Cavalry could operate with just that few of people. But that wasn't up to me. So anyway, so they marched us over to personnel, which was half a mile away. We got out there and a guy comes out and he says, anyone of you, a sole surviving son, fall in behind me. So they go and walk behind him. Anybody that's got a brother or father in Vietnam at this time, fall in behind me. So there was maybe one or two. Anybody here that's had a brother or father, close blood relative that was killed in Vietnam, fall back here. So there was a few, but not very many. And it was Lloyd and Boyd Adams. They were from Kentucky. They were pretty tough characters too. And they were twin brothers. And I'll tell a story about, tell my wife about Boyd Adams one of these days. But anyway, so they wouldn't go because they said, if my twin brother isn't going, I'm not going to go. I'm not going and leaving him here. They weren't going to split up. So anyway, then they had to process us through to fly out to go to Frankfurt and fly from there to Goose Bay, Labrador, to the air base to refuel, and then we flew to Seattle, Washington to get processed to go to Vietnam. So we got to Fort Lewis, Washington, state of Washington, and we no sooner got settled down, and we were off to head to Yakima Flats for tank gunnery, because my original orders were to go to the 18th Armored Cavalry, which was up by the demilitarized zone up by Vietnam, what I was trained to do. But in the meantime, the Tet Offensive had broken out, and in the meantime, the Russians were storing up, and there was the Czechoslovakian crisis, it was called. The Czechoslovakian people were revolting against the Russians. So they were going to send us back to Germany, to our regular unit, to go back to the Iron Curtain in case we were going to go in there and help these Czechoslovakians out against the Russians. Well, by the time that all rolled around, the Czechoslovakian people gave up. So my orders had been thrown away to go to the 18th Armored Cavalry. So here we are, I'm sitting in an overseas replacement station in Fort Lewis, Washington. So I was doing odd jobs, odds and ends. I even went as far as umpiring baseball games and stuff like that. I pitched a little softball over there, which I did in Germany for the 3rd Armored Cavalry. Well, and they found out I had some athletic skill, and I knew the rules of fast pitch softball. So I did that through the summer, and here we're in an overseas replacement station, living out of our duffel bags. No permanent duty or nothing. I figured, well, I ain't going to rot here, because I'm supposed to be getting out of the service approximately around the 5th of June of 1969, and this is already the fall of 1968, and guys were being picked off one by one, getting sent to Vietnam. We didn't go as a group. And by golly, here it rolls around 1st of November, and I think, well, they can't hardly send me over there. I only got 7-8 months left in the service, and I'm And they'll never send me because there's not a full year tour. Well, then all of a sudden, it must have been around the 5th of November, I got my orders for Vietnam. But they told me I was going to Vietnam, but they didn't tell me what outfit I was going to, which most of them. All it said in my orders is, go to Cam Ranh Bay, South Vietnam for reassignment. They're going to reassign me there. So I went home on leave, back to Chippewa Falls, through deer season and whatnot. And I ended up going to back to Fort Lewis, Washington, around the 1st of December. And I was at the Overseas Replacement Station where I had just left because I had my 30-day, well, it ended up not being 30 days, only like 24. And I went back, and anyway, when I got back to Fort Lewis, Washington, well, I got on the plane, and it was cold and snow around here and whatnot, and we flew from Seattle, Washington to Anchorage, Alaska, and from Anchorage, Alaska to Tokyo, Japan, and they by Northwest Orient Airlines. And there we landed. We got to get off the plane, but we had to stay within a roped-in area, and we got back on the plane again after about a couple hours, and they switched from Caucasian stewardesses to Orientals. And from there, they flew us into Cam Ranh Bay, South Vietnam. And I remember just before we landed, one of the Green Berets was on there. He says, well, boys, enjoy your cold milk because it's the last milk you're going to see. So we got off there, and I got there, I got reassigned. Here I got reassigned to the 1st Infantry Division. I'm a fish out of water. I didn't have no tanks or nothing, and they were sending me down to the Delta, which was just northwest of Saigon, to a place called Lai Kay, 1st Infantry Division. I thought, oh boy, maybe a motor pool sergeant. We really didn't have motor pool. We just had a space out there and stuff where we worked in the shade on Jeeps, trucks, anything, make sure they had oil in them, tires, whatever, just to keep our ammunition and our food supply going and moving the trucks out. And we slept in bunkers under the ground. 14 men slept in ours, and we used old artillery ammo boxes filled with sand for our wall supports. And we had air raid sirens, whatnot, around there. And then that's pretty much where I stayed there. Let's see. Yeah, we didn't, we just, it was out in the jungle. We were in a Michelin rubber plantation. It was 65 miles long, 35 miles wide. The French had planted that plantation when it was the French Indochina Wars, and it was like checked corn. All the trees were in rows, perfectly planted rows, east and west, and they hadn't been harvested for a long time. So you could stick your bayonet in the bark, and you pull it, and it would ooze out like a yellow gum, real sticky. And anyway, we could not bomb in that area or any destruction. The enemy could, because they didn't give a damn, because they could fire from Cambodia, which was a neutral country, into us. And they were real tall trees. And I remember when I got there was just buds on the trees in the first part of December. And I remember writing my mother, telling her, well, the leaves are starting to fall, or all fall, they're starting to bud out again. I said, there must be, southern hemisphere versus north, whatever, that they're falling again. All the leaves come out, and they had rubber trees, have huge leaves, and they're real tall trees. Damn it, end of February, all of a sudden, the leaves are starting to fall again. Holy man, they must mature fast, I thought. And they were falling down. Didn't know, here was Agent Orange they were spraying the trees with. Well, then when that killed all the grass and all the leaves, we found a lot of shit. A lot of artillery shells, mortar rounds, claymore mines, all the shit the enemy had that they got from the Russians and the Chinese and whatnot. And Agent Orange has probably caused some of my health problems, but I always said probably wouldn't be alive if it wouldn't be for Agent Orange. It was quite a deal. But anyway, we got Carling's Black Label, found out how to wheel and deal, trade stuff with the Navy, and guys, they'd send guys to Saigon for ammunition and whatnot with trucks and everything, and there was always a truck or two of beer coming along back because that was part of the deal, and nobody said nothing. And New Year's Eve, we sat down in the hole and 4 o'clock in the morning of '69 and listened to O.J. Simpson run against, because we had a few guys from Ohio in our outfit and a few guys from California. Well, University of Southern California was playing Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. We got that on Armed Forces Network, so we sat down at 4 o'clock in the morning drinking beer and listening to the Rose Bowl. But our food got good. The only thing, Easter dinner didn't get much. We came back off of village patrol about 4:35 in the afternoon, and they were out of food. So we ended up eating tomato sandwiches on white bread. That was our Easter meal. Didn't taste too bad. We laughed and joked. Rails Wheeler, he was from Augusta, Georgia. He was a character too. And he laughed, God damn, boy, this is the best chicken I ever had, and all that stuff. We were laughing because everybody's in the same boots. We're way out in the middle of nowhere, and so just look out for one another, and that's what we had to do. So anyway, I put in for bank. They said you should go on R&R. It's free. It's 5 days. It don't cost you anything, and you can go pick the place you want to go. They said, well, we would advise you, being a single man, don't put in for Hawaii, because there's married guys go there to like to meet their wife, and a single guy takes their ticket, okay. And Sergeant Jones, he was a black guy from someplace in Texas, good man. And he said, go to Bangkok. Bangkok, Thailand's good. He said, there's always openings to go there. He said, it's better than going to Taiwan or Tokyo or any place like that. In Australia, he said, it's too expensive to fly you down there. So I put in for Bangkok, Thailand. One day, got called up to the officer's hooch. We're filled up. We can't send you to Bangkok. How'd you like to go to Taiwan? I said, sure, whatever. I said, I'm only gonna have about a month left in Vietnam, and I said, go somewhere. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. Taiwan's filled up after a few days. Pretty soon, something else filled up. I said, how would you like to go to Bangkok, Thailand? I said, that's what I signed up for in the first place. So I ended up going to Bangkok. Stayed at the Morakot Hotel, and a lot of communists in Bangkok, so you had to kind of watch yourself. Always traveled at least with someone else or whatever. And anyway, when I was gone to Bangkok, my outfit got hit pretty hard. I must have no sooner left. I was in the middle of there someday. I was only gone 5 days. But anyway, I come back, there's a lot of stuff, blew all the shit that wasn't before. But we didn't lose any men that I knew of. The only one I knew, and I can't even think of his name now, he was a black, got shot in the cheekbone under his right eye. But he didn't lose his eye, but I never seen him. When I came back, he was already gone and probably rotated back to the States. They didn't patch him up and send him back. If you get shot in the head, that's not good. And then I stayed there, and a fellow by the name, when I came back, there was a guy by the name of Gary Eichorn from Emporia, Kansas. He was there. It was an E5. And I came back, and they said, you train him to take over your squad. You're not going out anymore. I said, why? No, you're not going out anymore. You only got 23 days left in country. You're going to stay here, and he's going to take your outfit, but you're going to show him the ropes. Okay, fine and dandy. So then the last week I was there, I was doing things that E5 sergeants never do. I was mixing cement and wheelbarrows, anything to pass the time, keep it busy. It was thought to be help of some kind, and Gary's doing a good job of everything. And so anyway, finally it was time to say goodbye. Got on C-130 and flew down to Long Bin, and of course got to talk to the recruiting sergeant, and now I'm not staying. And they promised me, to give me another rank, move me up to E6, and I could have a duty station of my choice, and all these promises. But I saw my dad cry when I left for Vietnam, and I promised I was never going to do that again. So I was down in Long Bin, and then loaded us up on a bus after a day or so, and they took us buses and hauled us over to, or no, I take it back, I was at Zion, and they hauled us to Long Bin to be processed for our shops and whatnot. And we got that done after a day. Then we went to Tonson Air Force Base, which was, you could see it from where we were, to fly to Cameron Bay to catch a flight at 4 o'clock that afternoon to go to come back to the States. Fly out of Cameron Bay at 4 in the afternoon to the States. That's about 10 o'clock in the morning. It's maybe a 2-hour flight. So we goes and we gets on to C-130, and all the guys are loaded up in there and stuff. And there's in the middle, it's a cargo plane. In the middle, there's pallets of food and whatnots in there. It's a hell of a big transport plane. So our flight was to take off at 10 o'clock in the morning, so it was pretty close to 10 or after when we took off. And all of a sudden, a guy jumps up and he says, "This motherfucker's on fire." Holy shit, now what? You couldn't hardly smell it in there, but one of the wings got hit when we took off. So they circled around and came back and landed on the airstrip where we had taken off from. And you couldn't really see the smoke, but you could smell a peculiar smell and stuff like that. So they dropped the tailgate, and as we were coming into land, they said, "Leave all your gear, leave all your clothes, leave everything on the plane, and there's bunkers alongside of the runway. Take your orders, your paper orders of your destination with your name, and all you need is that and the clothes on your back. And get in those bunkers as fast as you can in orderly, So we go and we jump in and we're sitting down. All of a sudden, mortar rounds are coming in, boom, boom, And kind of rhythmic as it's going. We're sitting in there. So we sat in those bunkers. 4 hours later, we get on our plane, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, to fly to Cameron Bay to catch our flight home. So we flew up to Cameron Bay, which is on the coast between halfway between North and South Vietnam, kind of. And Cameron Bay was an island that you could drive onto, or a peninsula, I guess I should say, is what the commercial airlines used to use to fly soldiers back and forth. And anything after 3 minutes, it cost Uncle Sam like $1,000 a second that plane was on the ground. Anyway, so as luck would have it, by the time we got to Cameron Bay, here our plane to the States is already gone. We didn't get there till almost 6 o'clock, and our plane left at 4 in the afternoon. We thought, oh shit, what now? So here we're at the overseas replacement, where I was when I came into country. The barracks were full, so they had steel PSP laying on the ground, and we laid on the sleeping bags because it's too damn hot to crawl in a sleeping bag. So that's where we laid and we slept. We had to get up every day. They had a flight call about every 2 hours to go, and they were going to take us guys off that plane and put us in there. Like, say, for instance, somebody was scheduled to go on that flight, got shot, or something happened that they didn't make it, we'd fill in their seats. Christ, I got to thinking, I'm here my 4th day now. This is the 30th of May, and I was supposed to be, I wrote the folks and told them I'll be home on the 26th of May. And here I'm 4 days late. The old man thinks I'm in a flop house in California somewhere, You know where the hell I am. And I'm sitting over there halfway around the goddamn world. There's no cell phones, no nothing like that, so there you are. So there I sat. And anyway, so a guy was leaving. He was from Buffalo, New York. I don't know what his name was. All I know is he had black rimmed glasses. And he said, "I got $5 worth of military payment certificates. Here," he said, "you can have these because they're no good back in the States. Because you were supposed to turn in all your money before that, make the exchange. You couldn't bring any of that. It was like Monopoly money. $5 bills were yellow, say, for instance. $10 might be blue. $1 bills might be orange or whatever. And every once in a while, they'd switch it so the communists couldn't use that money for Operation Gold Flow, is what they called it. And anyway, so he gave it to me. So I said to the guys in the barracks, because I might be leaving tonight, the midnight flight. Anyway, so here are some Vietnamese gals down there wearing mini skirts, pretty girls and stuff. And I always remember the first song they sang was from the Beatles, "She loves you, rah, rah, rah," and we cracked up and shit. Anyway, we're drinking Carling's Black Label, which was probably a nickel a bottle. And anyway, drank the whole damn thing up. And here it ends up, I was there 3 more days, and most of the other guys are all gone. I don't even remember anybody. And the last time was that called my name. His name was Sergeant Resato. He was a drill sergeant I had at Fort Leonard, Missouri 3 years before that. And he talked real broken. He was a Puerto Rican. And he kept calling my name and calling his name out. And I'm standing there, and I didn't hear anybody say anything close to Meinen. And all of a sudden he said, 1697146. And I said, here, Sergeant. I said, what the hell the matter with you? Don't want to go home and all that shit? That's what I say, you know. Well, say my name the way it's supposed to. If it wouldn't have been for my serial number, I'd probably still be there. But anyway, so we went and slept on the PSP that night, and our plane took off for the States 2 o'clock that morning. Saturn Airways out of San Diego, and we flew from Cameron Bay to Tokyo, and then we switched from Oriental stewardesses to American stewardesses again, except they were old ladies, but what the hell, they were American. And then we went up to Anchorage and back to Seattle the same way. And when we landed at Fort Lewis, Washington, chaplain came and talked to us right away, and he says, you guys are going to get out of here today. Hey, you always say it takes 4 days to get out of here. He said, the reason you're going to get out of here today is because if you stay till the 1st of June, Uncle Sam's going to have to pay you another month of combat pay, another month of overseas pay, another month of hazardous duty pay, and he ain't going to do that. Sure as hell. 10:30 that night, I was the first one they called up to be discharged. I walked up on the stage, and I saluted that second lieutenant, and he said, you don't have to salute me. You're a civilian. He handed me my papers. So then we got on the bus, and we headed to Seattle, and I caught a plane out of Seattle to, well, first we landed at Spokane, Washington. It was Great Falls and Billings, and then anyway, an old lady sat alongside of me when I got there, and the plane no sooner took off, she reached in her purse, gave me one of miniature bottles of whiskey to drink. Yep. And she got off at Spokane. She gave it to me. So anyway, so I flew that far, and I landed in the Twin Cities, and to get North Central Airlines to fly to Eau Claire to get home. That was 4 o'clock in the morning, and they said the airport thing don't open up for North Central Airlines to Eau Claire until 8 o'clock. So I was sitting there sleeping in the chair, dozing off. Here a guy comes in a white Navy uniform. He's getting out. He's from Boyd. Didn't know him. Sitting down alongside of me. And he said, yeah, he's going to fly into Eau Claire also. So we're sitting there, and it's Memorial Day weekend, and walks up to get a ticket. Says, well, you can't get military standby because the college kids got them all taken. There's no room for you guys. And telling us the reasons why. All of a sudden, this big Navy guy says, you mean to tell me I flew halfway around the world, and you're going to tell me that I can't fly another 90 miles? And that's all he said. So we went and we sat down, and they said, you just have to sit there, and if there's an open seat, you can get back to Eau Claire. Geez, I didn't want to have him make Ma drive over there, you know, because I waited all this while. I'm going to surprise him. I'm 4 days late. I did call him and tell him that I was in the cities, but I said, I'll catch the noon flight to Eau Claire. By golly, we were the first ones on the plane. Yep. So that's the military part of it. I don't think we got time for any more. Enough memories for one night. I hope I satisfied what you needed to know. There's probably some things I left out, some things I don't know, but I'm glad I did what I did. If I had to do it over again, I'd do it over again. I didn't run.
Thank you, Lloyd.
You bet.